I will be reading The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with a great heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gentle as possible the news of her husband's death. It was her sister Josephine who told her, in broken sentences, veiled hints that revealed and half concealing. Her husband's friend Richard was there too, near her. It was he who had been in the newspaper room when intelligence of the railroad disaster was received, with Brentley Mallard's name leading the list of killed. He had only taken the time to assure himself of his truth by a second telegram, and had hastened to forestall any less careful, less tender friend in bearing the sad message. She did not hear the story, as many women have heard the same, with paralyzed inability to accept its significance. She wept at once with sudden, wild abandonment in her sister's arms. When the storm of the grief had spent itself, she went away to her room alone. She would have no one follow her. There stood, facing the open window, a comfortable, roomy armchair. Into this she sank, pressed down by a physical exhaustion that haunted her body and seemed to reach into her soul. She could see the open square before her house, the tops of the trees that were all aquiver with the new spring life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air, and in the streets below a peddler was crying of his wares. The notes of distant song which someone was singing reached her faintly, and countless sparrows were twittering in the east. There were patches of blue skies showing here and there, and the clouds that had met and piled one above the other, and the west facing her window. She sat with her head thrown back upon the cushion of the chair, quite motionless, except when a sob came into her throat and shook her, as a child who had cried itself to sleep, continuous to sob in its dreams. She was young, with a fair, calm face, whose line bespoke repression and even a certain strength. But now there was a dull stare in her eyes, whose gaze was fixed away off on one of those patches of blue skies. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicated a suspension of intelligent thought.